Hello, and welcome to the demo for the Cardshark Brain application by Sharkface Poker. The Cardshark Brain application is an app for the iPad, iPhone, and iPod Touch, as well as the Windows phones. So they sell in the iTunes App Store, as well as the Windows Marketplace. There are 5 major tools in the app: hand strength, odds calculator, pot odds plus, EV calculator, and post-flop analysis. And these tools are designed to help a wide variety of skilled players, anywhere from beginning to more advanced levels. Starting out with the first tool, hand strength, this is more of a entry-level tool to help somebody get an understanding of how strong their starting hand is versus all other available hands that could be dealt. There are 1,326 possible starting hands, and so from the selector we can choose one of those hands, for example, queens, and this will show you what your odds are of winning against another random opponent. In this case, 79.91% of the time pocket queens will win. This tool shows the stats for high card, 2-pair, straight, flush, all the way up to straight flush, the odds of hitting it with that particular hand. It also shows the number of worse hands, the number of better hands. You can select the number of opponents to not just be 1, but all the way up to 9, and it will update the statistics accordingly. Like this tool, with all other tools, you have to there is a internet connection is required. The calculations are all done up in the cloud, and then the results are returned to the interface as we see it here. You can also traverse through the hands, and you can select a different hand and it will update the stats for that hand, and as well as indicating the next stronger hand or the next weaker hand. Hitting the back button, we can now look at the odds calculator. The odds calculator is basically your classic full table poker odds calculator, the same calculations that are used on the World Series of Poker. So you can select up to as many opponents on a full table. So for example, maybe I have ace-queen suited and my opponent has a pair of 2s. You will see that ace-queen suited is favored 50.09% of the time versus pocket 2s having 49.29. From the middle of the screen I can select the community or flop cards, and in this case pocket 2s is now favored to win with this board 57.98% of the time. The little number indicating next to the ace-queen shows you the number of outs, and by tapping that you will see the number of cards that will help improve the player's hand to give he or she the lead. For example, if I throw an ace down, now the ace-queen is favored to win 95.45% of the time. The little green halo indicates the hand that is ahead. And now, as we can see, there are 2 outs for deuces, and those are both the remaining 2s in the deck. Throughout selecting this, I can also add another player, and it will update the outs for that given hand. I can put up to full table. The red X, as you see there, indicates that that hand cannot win. And then again, these are the remaining outs for those given hands. Obviously now this has been updated to 1 because one of the deuces has been taken by another opponent. There is an online help if you are curious to look at some of the details for that particular tool. And you can hit the home button as well, and it will take you back to the main help form, and you can select any one of the tools or contact us, view us on Facebook or Twitter. To get back to the app, because the help is outside of the application, you do have to minimize with the home button and then hit your app, the icon again, and you'll be right back in the tool that you just left. You can reset the board entirely by hitting the main curly arrow button, and the back button will take you to the main screen. Looking at the third tool is the pot odds plus pot odds calculator, and what this does is allow you to select a hand that you might want to review, say a pair of 8s, and choose a board which displays a given pot and a bet made by an opponent. As you can see, there's no opponent card selected yet, showing 2 question marks, meaning a random hand. and using the odds calculation of all remaining opponents, we can determine statistically if this hand is going to be favored or behind given the remaining hands and the hands selected by the player and the board. In this case, since pocket eights are going to win more than half of the time, statistics say that if a player bets into you, that you should raise. The pot odds to simply call will show 5-1, but the draw odds and implied odds in this case are not applicable because you're favored to win. The draw odds would show up, for example, when the hand is going to win statistically less than 50% of the time. So in this case, I'm holding 2-4 offsuit. A player bets 25 into a $100 pot. The pot odds are 5-1, and I need 11.75 to 1 on my money, or draw odds of hitting my outs. Would be 4 outs, a 3 would give me a straight. The implied odds, which really are the required implied odds, defined as what an opponent would need to make, assuming that they hit their out, would be 6.75 more. And this number is determined by subtracting the draw from the pot odds. So as a player looking at this, if I'm only getting 5-1 on my money, but I am a 11.75 to 1 to hit my draw, I need to make an additional 6.75 to 1 to make this call justifiable. So that's what the required, or in this case implied odds, need to be for me to justify making this call 5-1. The break-even pot shows how much should be in the pot with a $25 bet to make the hand, 268.75. So by tapping this red button, if I chose, I can hit clear, if I chose $269, we can now see that I'm getting 11.76 to 1 on my money, but I'm only 11.75 to 1 on the draw. So now I do have the pot odds to make the call. I can also choose an opponent, in this case 2 jacks, and as you can see the odds are relatively the same. I still need 4 threes. And I can also select the turn card, and in this case, if it is a 3, pot odds are 11.76 to 1, but I'm going to win 100% of the time, so the action would be here to raise. Again, I can always reset the board, and I have the online help. The fourth tool, and a little more complicated or advanced tool, is the expected value calculator. And what the EV calculator does is allow a player to assess making a move. This is very similar to Harrington's structured hand analysis that shows the expected value of going all in or making large bets. So for example, if I had a hand like 2 sevens and I decided that my player opponent number 1 might call me with ranks of 1 through 3 type hands by running this in the cloud, he will call 8% of the time given the hands that he would call me with, and with that rank he would win 61% of the time and he would lose 38% of the time. The expected value would be $618, and if we take the values from this opponent, add it into my bet of 10,000, subtracting the percentage of being called, uncalled, and the win percentage, my total expected value is 94.91. So making a $10,000 all-in bet with a pair of sevens versus a hand, versus a player that would call me with aces, kings, queens, jacks, ace, king, all the way down to queen, jack suited, I could expect that this would be a profitable outcome of $94.91 over a given time. As I start selecting more opponents or more ranges, you can see it updates showing what I'd expect to win in this case. Once you start selecting or increasing the rank of calling hands, the expected value will change accordingly, and you will see the percentage of hands that will call you versus the ones that will not, and the win-loss percentage of those hands. I can also choose the amount in the pot. So making a bet into a pot where the big blind is 2,000, we now see that the expected value, positive outcome, would be 1776. If I wanted to increase the amount of chips that I was shoving with, it would still be the same, until I increase the amount of chips for myself versus the opponents. So in this case, if I shoved $100,000 in chips, and one player had 100,009 and another player still had 10, this would be the new expected value. This tool is really nice because now I can also include a board in there, and the statistics are updated accordingly. I can also add a hypothetical ante. For example, maybe there's a $989 ante, kind of an unusual amount. And as you can see, I can choose up to 4 players. I can select a turn card, and I can reset the board. The fifth tool is called the post-flop analysis, and this is very similar to the layout of the pot odds tool. What this tool does is statistically show you which cards will help and hurt you based on a given board. So if I had ace-king of clubs, and this was the flop against a random hand, statistically there is no scare cards. All the cards will be green that are going to be helpful, and any cards that are going to be red would be unhelpful. If I change the board, for example, and I put out there 4 Jack 9, statistically we can see which cards coming on the turn are going to prove our win percentage. At this time we can also select if we wanted to assume that we knew what the opponent had. So we know that pocket queens is going to win 76% of the time, and the only cards in green that are statistically going to help me are the aces and the kings. We can see number of better hands, a number of worse hands, number of hands that might have flush draws. Obviously this statistic is not as relevant when you've selected an opponent, but when you don't, we can maybe assess how many hands would have maybe 4 hearts or have better straight draws. Hands like Queen 10 or King Queen, etc. You can reset the board. When you do that, you'll notice that all the cards are shown in gray. So this is the 5 tools for the poker odds calculator for the iPad, iPhone, iPod Touch. And as I indicated, this is also available for the Windows Phone as well. And I'm going to show that right now. This is the Nokia 710 Lumia, and the 5 tools are also available in here. Obviously the screens are smaller than an iPad, but it does run on the Windows Phone. And again, if you have a Wi-Fi or another type of internet access, this device will work perfectly fine. So I hope you've enjoyed the presentation of the Cardshark Brain, and look forward to any feedback. Please visit us on Facebook or Twitter.